Welcome to Topic 5 of Ethics and Governance. This topic explores one of the most interesting and genuinely difficult tensions in the entire course: the difference between ethics and morality, and the gap that can open up between what is legal and what is right. These distinctions sound abstract, but they sit underneath some of the hardest decisions real finance professionals ever face. In this lecture, we will carefully define three different standards: law, ethics, and morality. See how they can pull in different directions, and then consider why ethical leadership matters so much in an industry where so much is permitted that is not necessarily right. The textbook carries the full detail. Let us work through the ideas together. Let me open with the question that defines this whole topic. Imagine a company does something that is completely legal and that even follows all the relevant professional rules. And yet, when you hear about it, something in you says it is simply wrong. Many people feel uneasy, even though no rule has been broken. So here is the question: is "we broke no law" a complete and satisfying answer to a charge that something was wrong? Most of us sense deep down that it is not, that legality is not the end of the conversation. By the end of this topic, you will be able to explain clearly why legality, professional ethics, and personal morality are three genuinely different things, and why the most difficult and interesting cases in finance are precisely the ones where these three come apart and point in different directions. So, who actually sets the standards of right and wrong? It turns out that three different sources do, and distinguishing them is the key to this whole topic. First, the law, which is set by the state and is enforceable. Break it, and there are legal consequences. Second, professional ethics, which is set by institutes and firms. The codes of conduct that bind a profession, like the ones we studied in the last topic. And third, morality, which is personal, an individual's own internal sense of right and wrong, shaped by their values, their upbringing, their conscience, and often their faith. Now, most of the time, these three sources broadly agree, which is why we rarely notice the difference. But they are not always the same. And this entire topic is about what happens and what you should do when they diverge. After this topic, you should be able to do the following: distinguish ethics from morality and distinguish both of them from the law. Explain how an action can be perfectly legal yet still unethical, or legal yet morally troubling. Recognize these tensions when they appear in real financial situations, and explain why ethical leadership and strong personal values matter so much in finance, an industry where a great deal is permitted that is not necessarily the right thing to do. In short, we are sharpening your judgment for the gray areas, the situations the rule book does not settle for you. Here is our path. First, the difference between ethics and morality. Second, the three standards: law, ethics, and morality, and how they relate to one another. Third, applying the key question of the topic: it may be legal, but is it right? And finally, why ethics matters in finance and what genuine ethical leadership actually looks like. By the end, you will be comfortable reasoning in that space between what is allowed and what is right, which is exactly where the hardest professional decisions live. Let us begin by carefully separating two words that people very often use as if they meant the same thing: ethics and morality. Ethics and morality are closely related, but they are not identical, and the difference is worth getting precisely right. Morality refers to an individual's own personal sense of right and wrong. It is internal. It lives inside you, shaped by your own values, your beliefs, your upbringing, and your conscience. Two honest people can have somewhat different moralities. Ethics By contrast, at least in the professional sense we use in this course, refers to the shared standards of conduct set by a profession or by society. It is external, written down in codes, agreed upon collectively, and applied to everyone in the profession. So you can immediately see how the two could come apart. A person's private morality might go beyond what their professional ethics strictly requires. Their conscience asks more of them than the code does, or occasionally the two might even pull against each other. And here is why both matter and why you need both. Ethics gives us common, shared, enforceable standards so that a whole profession behaves consistently and the public can rely on it. But morality is the inner conviction that makes a person actually do the right thing even when no code is watching and no one would ever find out. A good professional needs both, the external standard and the internal compass. Now let us place these two alongside the law and think of the three together as three standards that judge our conduct. It helps to picture three standards, each setting a different bar for behavior. The law sets the minimum, it tells you what you must not do, and it is backed by the power of the state. The law is essential, but it is a floor, not a ceiling. Ethics sets the professional expectation. It tells you how a good practitioner should behave, and it is backed by codes and professional bodies. And morality sets the personal standard. It tells you what your own conscience demands, and it is backed by nothing but your own character. Now, usually, these three overlap a great deal. Most things that are illegal are also unethical and immoral, but the three circles are not the same size, and they do not line up perfectly. Some things are legal but unethical. Some things go beyond what the law requires but are ethically admirable. And an individual's personal morality may ask still more than either. The genuinely interesting and difficult cases in finance and in life live in the gaps between these three circles, in the places where they do not agree. And finance, it turns out, produces a great many such cases. Let me make this concrete with one clear idea. Suppose a large multinational company arranges its affairs so as to pay very little tax, using methods that are entirely lawful, moving profits between countries, using legal loopholes and incentives. Now, notice carefully, nothing illegal has happened here at all. This is tax avoidance, which is legal, not tax evasion, which is a crime. The company's lawyers and accountants have stayed firmly within the law, and yet many people would judge it as unfair because the company benefits from public roads, an educated workforce, a stable society, all funded by taxes it has arranged not to pay. So this is the very essence of our topic. We broke no law is simply not the end of an ethical analysis. When you meet a case like this, the skill is to not stop at the question of legality. Go further and ask, is it fair and would it survive public scrutiny? Would the company be comfortable if its tax arrangements were fully explained on the evening news? Now, reasonable, thoughtful people can genuinely disagree about a case like this, and that is exactly the point. It is a real dilemma, which is why it has to be reasoned through carefully rather than settled by simply pointing at the law. With that distinction clear, let us turn to why all of this matters so intensely in finance specifically, and what ethical leadership requires of the people at the top. Why does ethics matter so much in finance in particular? Because the finance industry constantly, almost daily, offers people actions that are legal but not necessarily right, aggressive but lawful products, clever financial structures that technically comply with every rule while obscuring real risk, communications that are literally true but designed to mislead, The law simply cannot anticipate and forbid every one of these in advance. It is always a step behind human ingenuity. So in finance, a very great deal comes down to the judgment and the character of the individual people involved in the moment when no rule gives them the answer. That is precisely where ethics fills the gap that the law inevitably leaves open. The blunt lesson of this topic is that in finance, doing only what is legal is simply not enough. The trust that the entire system depends on requires people to do what is right, not merely what they can get away with. And this is exactly why ethical leadership matters so profoundly. Leaders set what we call the tone at the top, the signal sent mainly through their own behavior rather than their words, about what is really valued in an organization. People watch what their leaders actually do. When leaders genuinely model integrity, treat people fairly, and visibly resist the temptation to chase what is merely permitted but wrong, that culture spreads downward through the whole organization. It gives everyone else permission to do the right thing. But the reverse is just as true and just as powerful. When leaders cut ethical corners because something is legal and profitable, that message spreads too, and quickly, people conclude that this is how you get ahead here. So strong personal values in leadership are not a soft, optional extra. They are the actual foundation of an ethical organization. Culture is built from the top, by example, every single day. Let me consolidate the three standards so you hold them clearly. The law tells you what you must do, at minimum, on pain of penalty. Ethics tells you what you should do as a professional to meet the standards of your field. And morality tells you what your own conscience demands of you personally. An action can satisfy one of these and fail another, perfectly legal yet unethical, or within the rules yet something your conscience cannot accept. The real skill of this topic is to hold all three standards in view at once, and in the gaps between them, to keep asking the defining question. It may be legal, but is it right? That single habit of mind is what separates a merely compliant professional from a truly ethical one. Here is the topic on one map. At the center, ethics versus morality. Around it, the distinction between personal internal morality and shared external professional ethics, the three standards of law, ethics, and morality, and how their circles overlap but do not perfectly align. The defining question, it may be legal, but is it right? And the importance of ethical leadership and strong values in finance. Together, these teach you to navigate the gray areas where the rules run out and judgment has to take over. That concludes topic 5. Let me leave you with what matters most. Morality is personal and internal. Ethics is shared and professional, and both of them can go beyond what the law strictly requires. An action can be perfectly legal and yet unethical, or legal and yet morally troubling. And precisely because finance is so full of these gray areas where the law runs out, ethical leadership and strong personal values are not optional. They are essential to maintaining trust. Please read the full chapter in the textbook for the detail and the discussion. Thank you for watching, and I will see you in the next topic.